Hello everyone. This is Eric from Invensis Learning. Welcome to our YouTube channel. In this tutorial session, we are going to learn everything about Agile methodology. Before we get started, let us quickly go through the agenda. As you can see on the screen, we will begin by knowing a little bit about the history of Agile. We will also take a look at the methodologies that were used before the Agile development model. Then we will discuss the Agile Manifesto, about the values and the principles present in it. Post that we will discuss what exactly is Agile, its advantages and disadvantages, and its components. Then we will talk about the people who are part of the Agile team, the Agile Lifecycle, and the different metrics that Agile teams use. Then we will discuss various Agile methodologies, best practices and tools. Finally, we will conclude this session by discussing how to use the Jira tool to manage an Agile project. Let's get started. Whether or not you recognize its name, you have probably encountered Agile, or at least companies that use it. In the past decade, Agile has swept across industries, literally leading everyone from tech giants to startups to work differently. It may seem like another meaningless corporate buzzword used by project management types. But it's actually a very specific philosophy, one that is outlined in the 4-bullet, 68-word document signed at Snowbird. But, are you aware of how Agile movement happened? Did it happen by chance or was it inevitable? How was the name Agile selected? Let's take a brief look at the history of Agile. In the late 1990s, the personal computer explosion happened. With that, almost everyone gained access to modern computing. The explosion of personal computing meant that product and software development had to undergo changes to meet the increasing consumer demands. Software development faced a bit of a crisis, known as the application development crisis or application delivery lag. Industry experts of that time estimated a 3 years time gap between a business need and actual application. Obviously, within this time lag, requirements, systems, and even entire businesses were likely to change. That meant that projects ended up being cancelled partway through. Some of those that were completed didn't meet all the business's current needs, even if the project's original objectives were met. Throughout the world, software development teams started getting frustrated. People began thinking, the way we have been building software just isn't working for us. We've got to come up with something different. A lot of attempts were made to implement and promote iterative software development. But the entire decade was dominated by waterfall methods. Now, that might be a new term for few of you out there. So, let me brief you on it. Before Agile took hold, the software was built through waterfall development. A process where something was coded entirely from detailed guides, descriptions, and manuals. In simple terms, think of it as a slow, trickling, stage-by-stage process. It works something like this. Someone would come up with a piece of software they'd like built. Before so much as a line of code is written, the creators write out what they want to build, and how in a series of long, detailed plans. They craft what's called a requirements document, where they outline everything they want the software to do. Projects then flow downstream, from stage to stage, team to team, until they reach completion. At the very end, the entire new piece of software is tested, given back to the customer, and sent out the door. This approach may sound fine when you know what you want to build, but it can be too restrictive for some projects where requirements keep changing. Also, Waterfall prioritized bringing a complete product to market, meaning, it could take years before teams finished the project at hand. And of course, waiting until the end of a project to test the whole thing can be problematic. If you catch a bug at the last stage, it can be messy, or even fatal, to try to go back and fix it. At times, some software projects would get stuck and simply never ship. Most importantly, the waterfall methodology focuses very little on the end user or client involved with a project. Frustrated with these seemingly unproductive software development activities, software developers and other practitioners wanted to create processes that would give them more flexibility and actually allow them to ship software on time. While major and highly visible projects often used a strict waterfall model, alternatives were lurking in the background. And thus we saw the introduction of development methods like Scrum, Crystal Framework, Extreme Programming, DSDM, Feature-Driven Development and Pragmatic Programming. Some of these processes, like Scrum and Extreme Programming, XP, were called light or lightweight processes. But no one subset had really caught on. So, in 2001, people who created these methodologies and few others decided to join the forces. Who would have thought a software revolution would happen at Snowbird, Utah? But it was here, nestled in the white-capped mountains at a ski resort, that a group of software rebels gathered in 2001 to frame and sign one of the most important documents in its industry's history. They did some skiing and discussed how they could speed up development times in order to bring new software to market faster. There were a lot of things that they didn't agree upon, but there were a few things that they were to agree upon, and then ended up becoming Manifesto for Agile software development. And so the Agile Manifesto was born, with 4 values and 12 principles. But, what were those 4 values? Why should you care? Let's take a look. Individuals and interactions over processes and tools. In the past, a lot of software teams would concentrate on having the best possible tools and process to build the software. The Agile Manifesto suggests that it's the team you work with and the way you work together that determines success. In other words, Agile encourages humans to leverage the skills that only we as humans have: emotional intelligence, creative problem solving, and critical thinking. Working software over documentation. Like I mentioned when discussing the Waterfall model, traditional software development processes often focus on extensive documentation even before a line of code is written. However, in Agile software development, getting software in the hands of customers is the highest priority. With that said, it's important to note that documentation in itself is not a bad thing, as long as you don't overdo it. Customer collaboration over contract negotiation. Once upon a time, contracts were king. They dictated what to be delivered in the end, which left a lot of room for mismatched expectations. The Agile approach gives importance to customer-centric product development practices over product-centric approaches. According to the Agile Manifesto, the focus should be on continuous development. Responding to change over following a plan. Can you imagine a time where you would draw up a roadmap and it would never have to be changed at all? Well, in the past that's exactly what happened. There was no room to incorporate new requirements. Needs and requirements are always shifting, and priorities are never static. That's why the Agile Manifesto encourages frequent reviewing and retooling of current plans based on new information that the team is continually gathering and analyzing. So, your roadmap is no longer a static document, it becomes a dynamic strategy. So, these are the 4 epic rules that were drafted at the ski resort. With that said, it's important to note that the Agile Manifesto ends by noting that all of the things mentioned are important. Just that some things must be prioritized over others. The group finished the manifesto during the retreat. They spent the rest of the time working on the 12 principles behind the new document and, well, skiing. Let me walk you through these 12 principles quickly. The first principle says, our highest priority is to satisfy the customer through early and continuous delivery of valuable software. The second principle states, welcome changing requirements, even late in development. Agile processes harness change for the customer's competitive advantage. The next principle is, deliver working software frequently, from a couple of weeks to a couple of months, with a preference to the shorter timescale. Another principle states, business people and developers must work together daily throughout the project. There's also, build projects around motivated individuals. Give them the environment and support they need, and trust them to get the job done. And there's also the principle that states, the most efficient and effective method of information to and within a development is face-to-face conversation. One of the principles says, working software is the primary measure of progress. The ninth principle says, the sponsors, developers, and users should be able to maintain a constant pace indefinitely. There's another saying, continuous attention to technical excellence and good design enhances agility. Simplicity, the art of maximizing the amount of work not done, is essential, is yet another principle. One of the last principles is that, the best architectures, requirements, and designs emerge from self-organizing teams. Finally, there's the last principle that says, at regular intervals, the team reflects on how to become more effective, then tunes and adjusts its behavior accordingly. These 4 values and 12 principles continue to guide the Agile methodology used by teams today. After the authors got back from Snowbird, they were ready for the next chapter in the history of Agile. That is convincing the world of the value of everything they laid out in the Agile Manifesto. To help spread the word about Agile Manifesto, they decided to create a more permanent organization, and so the Agile Alliance was born. The Agile Alliance is a non-profit organization where people can share information about Agile, provide resources for teams looking to adopt the Agile methodology, explore and share ideas and experiences. As Agile took off, the role of the Agile Alliance expanded. In 2003, the now formal Agile Alliance returned to Utah for the first annual Agile Conference. This annual conference happens every year even now. As Agile became more widely known, an ecosystem formed. This ecosystem included people who were doing Agile and other people and organizations who helped them through consulting, training, frameworks, and tools. In the 2010s, Agile picked up a new stream. But between 2012 and 2015, Agile surpassed the 50% mark in adoption, truly taking the development world by storm. In 2017, we saw the first succinct definition of Agile testing. And that's the Agile software development methodology that we all use today. You know, there is a saying, success has many fathers. In that sense, Agile innovation has a colorful heritage. We have talked so much about the history of Agile, but what exactly is Agile? According to the Agile Alliance, Agile is a mindset, a philosophy informed by the values contained in the Agile Manifesto and the 12 principles behind the Agile Manifesto. These values and principles together provide guidance on how to create and respond to changes and deal with uncertainty with ease. So when you think of Agile as a mindset, that can be applied to other activities as well, not just project management or software development. Unlike the Waterfall model, Agile methodology emphasizes iterative development, or building software in pieces. By that I mean, you break down complex projects into small manageable goals. You are working towards these goals while adding new goals based on the requirements and customer feedback. They do this by breaking up the traditionally long delivery cycle into shorter periods, called sprints or iterations. The iterations provide the cadence for delivering a working product to customers, get their feedback, and make changes accordingly. Each of these iterations is a project in miniature. It has a backlog, or what you know as a requirement doc, and consists of design, implementation, testing and deployment stages within the predefined scope of work. At the end of each sprint, a potentially shippable product increment is delivered. Thus, with every iteration new features are added to the product, which results in the gradual project growth. Usually, Agile software development consists of small, self-organizing teams of software developers and business representatives regularly meeting in person throughout the software development life cycle. Agile is an umbrella term for several iterative and incremental software development approaches. The most popular Agile frameworks include Scrum, Extreme Programming, Lean, Crystal, Feature-Driven Development, and many others. While each of these has its own unique qualities, they all incorporate the principles of Agile when developing a product. Each has its own character that imbues it with strengths and weaknesses. By that I mean, all these approaches are fundamentally iterative, incremental and adaptive. Apart from the lightweight approaches, Agile can also be applied at scale. For that, we have frameworks such as Scaled Agile Framework, DSDM, and others which we can discuss later. Among all of the Agile variations, Scrum is by far the most popular and widely adopted Agile methodology. For now, I am just listing them. Later, after covering certain other topics, let's discuss each of these methodologies in detail. So, by now you might be able to comfortably point out the key differences between Waterfall and Agile models. Let us discuss the key differences between these two methodologies, or in general how Agile is different from traditional development approaches. Here we go. The Waterfall methodology incorporates a stepwise approach to project development. The project's progress flows downward through all the phases, similar to a waterfall. Whereas in Agile all the phases are repeated in every iteration. In the Waterfall model, you need to finalize the requirements before initiating development activities. Whereas in Agile, changes are welcomed at all stages, so it is a flexible approach. The Waterfall model has poor visibility compared to Agile methodology. Because, in the Waterfall model, working software is not produced until it reaches the last phase. One more difference between Waterfall and Agile is their individual approach towards testing and quality. According to Agile, testing is usually performed concurrently with the development phase. In Waterfall, the testing phase comes after the build phase. The Waterfall team is a very structured unit with a project manager leading the processes. Most of the team members have well-defined roles and only work on what they're asked to do. In the Agile approach, most of the team members are self-sufficient and cross-functional. While there's a product owner and project manager guiding the team, they're expected to be fairly self-sufficient. But the question is, who do you determine which methodology is right for you? When looking at Waterfall versus Agile frameworks, you need to think of: is the size of your project short and simple, or will it be better to divide it up? Is your team very structured, or is it filled with cross-functional members? Do your clients want to actively be a part of your project process? Does the project have fixed deliverables, or is it very flexible? There are a number of factors that should be considered before a methodology is adopted. As you can see on the screen, we've summed them up to help you decide which is more suitable for your project. Now that you are aware of what exactly Agile methodology is, I am sure you can point out a few benefits yourself. Let us go through some of the compelling reasons to consider Agile. Improved stakeholder engagement. In Agile, the customer is always involved in the decision-making process, which leads to greater customer retention. By keeping the customer in the loop and making changes according to their feedback, you deliver value to the customer and ensure that the final product is truly according to their requirements. Superior quality product. By breaking down the project into manageable units, the project team can focus on high-quality development testing and collaboration. The flexibility of the Agile method allows project teams to respond to customer reactions and constantly improve the product. Improved transparency. Agile is highly transparent. Everyone from stakeholders to the development team knows what's getting done, what's not, and who is making decisions. When the entire team understands the big picture, projects tend to move forward faster. Early and predictable delivery. By using time-boxed, fixed schedule sprints of 1 to 4 weeks, new features are delivered very quickly and frequently, with a high level of predictability. This also provides the opportunity to release or beta test the software earlier than planned if there is sufficient business value. Predictable costs and schedule. Since sprints have a fixed timeline, the cost is predictable and limited to the amount of work that can be performed by the team in that time. Allows for change. By creating smaller iterations, the team is able to focus on providing value without needing to get all the requirements up front. There is an opportunity to constantly refine and reprioritize the overall product backlog. New or changed backlog items can be planned for the next iteration, providing the opportunity to introduce changes within a few weeks. Acute focus on business value. Agile methods ensure that at any given time the project team is focused on delivering working software. The product backlog is prioritized based according to the customer's demand. This way the team can deliver the features that provide the most business value. Better control over the project. Agile allows managers to have better control over the project due to its transparency, feedback integration, and quality control features. Risk analysis. With increased visibility, predicting risks, and coming up with effective mitigation plans becomes easier. Agile works in small sprints that focus on continuous delivery. There is always a small part that can be salvaged and used in the future even if a particular approach doesn't go as planned. Improved team morale. As Agile teams are self-organized and self-managing, they have increased autonomy and authority over their decisions. The project manager shields the team from interference from sponsors and management. These are just some of the benefits businesses are realizing. Agile not only provides benefits to the development team, but also provides a number of important business benefits to the clients as well. Who uses Agile in real world? More firms than you think. Well, let us check out some real-life implementations of Agile then. Sky Group Limited is a British media and telecommunications conglomerate, which is a subsidiary of Comcast, and headquartered in London, England. For more than 8 years, Sky was using the same old classic method of define, design, and deliver. It was fine at the start, but after a few years, the employees started complaining that the process was slow to implement and too top-down. They wanted to challenge ourselves to help the organization learn without resorting to traditional means. Hence, instead of following the traditional method and waiting for results, Tracy, Director of People Experience at Sky, decided to find her resolutions in an Agile way. By embracing an Agile mindset, Tracy and her team have not only radically redesigned their own team structure and operative model but have revolutionized Sky's people practices and learning culture. Lonely Planet. Lonely Planet is a large travel guide book publisher. Founded in 1972, Lonely Planet is a publisher of travel books and has sold more than 120 million copies. Its popular travel app has more than 10 million downloads. The Lonely Planet legal team plays a vital role in the organization. Initially, the legal team was facing several challenges. The legal team was commonly working late, sometimes until midnight. This was beginning to cause burnout and frustration. Job satisfaction was waning. The lack of transparency of priorities of work being done by the team led their clients to generally assume they were not working on anything as important as their need for a non-disclosure agreement. For all these reasons, Agile seems counterintuitive. The fast-paced nature of Agile does not sit well with the perfectionism needed in the legal profession. However, with the right combination of Agile, Kanban, and Scrum, lawyers at Lonely Planet have transformed from a crushing work environment to crushing it. There are a lot of other organizations from different domains that are using Agile. Although Agile is often praised for its flexibility and quickness, it does come with some trade-offs. With planning and a dedicated team, these added challenges can be overcome. As you already know, Agile is framed around a time-boxed approach and priorities are constantly changing. This makes it hard to nail down a set delivery date on projects. Additionally, additional sprints or iterations can be added to the project strategy, increasing project timelines and pushing back previously set deadlines. Unlike Waterfall, Agile development only works well when the entire development team is committed to the project for the duration. This may be a challenge for some teams that have a lot going on at once, and may even prove challenging for individual developers. Agile teams are generally small, so all team members must be knowledgeable about a variety of processes, along with the Agile methodology itself. In Agile, because the initial plan might not be set, the actual final product can vary greatly from what was proposed. Agile is very flexible throughout the entire project, so iterations can be added, customer feedback can alter plans, and timelines can change, resulting in a potentially new deliverable. Most often than not in Agile teams, documentation tends to get sidetracked, which makes it harder for new members to get up to speed. That's another drawback that we have here. Let's go a little deeper and try to understand the people, processes, and tools behind the success of Agile methodology. Let's begin with components of Agile methodology. Because if we directly jump into the lifecycle, you will come across terms that you might not be familiar with. The first component that we have is sprints, or at times referred to as iterations as well. An iteration is a fixed time period during which the development takes place. This means everything happens during an iteration. Analysis, design, coding, testing. Typical iterations last 1 to 2 weeks, however, some may go as long as 4 weeks, and at the end of every iteration a working piece of software is delivered. As you move forward, the idea is to continuously repeat these iterations until your product is feature ready. User stories. A user story is a tool that captures an informal and general explanation of a software feature written from the perspective of the end user. It basically is an informal description of user requirements, spoken in plain English. A user story basically involves 3 things: a persona, an action, and a benefit. Here are some examples of a possible user story. As a marketing data analyst, I need to run the Salesforce and Google Analytics reports so that I can build the monthly media campaign plans. As a credit card holder, I want to view my statement balance, so that I can pay the balance due. As a frequent flyer, I want to rebook a past trip so that I can save time booking trips I take often. Epics. An epic is very much like a user story. It is also an expression of a business requirement, but it is large and will usually have to be broken down to be able to address it, be it for reasons of time or complexity. Let's say we have a user story that goes like this. As a customer, I want to be able to select the payment method, so that I can choose the most convenient one. Then, an epic related to this user story would be, as a customer I want to be able to purchase products online. Surely this will have to be broken down into quite a number of user stories, right? Features. In Agile development, a feature is a chunk of functionality that delivers business value. Features can include additions or changes to existing functionality. The features for a sprint become more detailed with input from customers, testers, and developers working together. No feature is described in detail until it's prioritized for a sprint. For example, I want to build a site that sells shoes. My features might be display informative home screen, user registration, user login, display products, and others that you can see on the screen. Product backlog. Obviously, when you are working on a project you have a list of user requirements, new features, bug fixes, infrastructure changes, and such. All these items are listed in an artifact and that artifact is referred to as backlog. The product backlog is the single authoritative source for things that a team works on. Stand-up meetings. Stand-ups are one of the fundamental parts of Agile development. In many sports like football and rugby, the team huddles before each play. It keeps the team informed, connected, and calibrated throughout the game. For software teams, the stand-up is like the team's huddle. Daily stand-up meetings, also known as daily Scrum meetings, are a great way to ensure everyone is on track and informed. To reduce the complexity, the meeting takes place at the same time and the same place daily. This meeting is normally time-boxed to a maximum duration of 15 minutes, though this may need adjusting for larger teams. Agile Board. An Agile Board is a visual representation of the progress of a software project. It helps you and your team to track the progress of your project and ensures transparency. The board is divided into 3 columns labeled To Do, In Progress and Done. You can place sticky notes or index cards, one for each task the team is working on in each column. These columns reflect the current status of the tasks. The format of the tables is not fixed as such. I mean, different Agile methodologies have different kinds of boards. Well, these are the key terms that you will come when dealing with Agile methodology. Now let's learn about the people that are part of the Agile team. When we talk about Agile teams, we mean well-functioning and high-performing teams that are able to innovate, solve complex problems and deliver at a high pace. The well-functioning Agile team is at the core of an Agile organization. So, who exactly is a part of this Agile team? Let's figure that out. So, product owner. Often an executive or key stakeholder, the product owner has a vision for the end product, and a sense of how it will fit into the company's long-term goals. A product owner is also responsible for defining the goals of each sprint, managing and prioritizing the team backlog, and for making decisions in a timely manner. Finally, the product owner ensures that product development translates into value for the stakeholders. Communication with end users, business executives, partners, and the development team is, therefore, a key responsibility. Next, we have Scrum Master or a team lead. This role is referred to as Scrum Master in Scrum Framework, or Team Coach or Project Lead in other methods. He or she is responsible for facilitating the team, obtaining resources for it, and protecting them from any sort of impediments and obstacles. In simple terms, they act as a coach and an advocate for the entire Agile team. Team leads also encompass the soft skills of project management, but not the technical ones such as planning and scheduling, activities that are better left to the team as a whole. Then we have team members. Team members are the ones who execute the work in each sprint. They have varied roles and skills, but all are responsible for getting stuff done on time and in excellent quality. Team members accept assignments, work on them independently and collaboratively, consult each other and the Scrum Master when they have questions, and have to ward off distractions for the duration of the sprint. The key responsibilities of the development team is to perform work sprints as per the requirements provided by the product owner and coordinated by the Scrum Master. Then there are stakeholders. The stakeholder position may not be directly involved in the product development process, but is used to represent a range of key roles that impact the decisions and work of the team. The key roles here can be business executives, production support staff, investors, external auditors, program or portfolio managers, or maintenance professionals who are part of the project. The stakeholders should be kept up to date on the product and sprint goals. Also, the input from stakeholders is key to direct the progress of the project in different directions to align product development with business goals. Apart from these typical roles, large enterprises working on large projects may include more roles into the Agile teams, which include technical and domain experts with the knowledge of technology as well as a wide variety of stakeholder requirements or expectations. An independent testing and audit team, working in parallel that validates their work throughout the lifecycle. Also, at times an architect owner may be required for architectural envisioning, planning, and decision making. I would like to reiterate that these roles may change from framework to framework and new roles might get added to Agile teams based on the requirement. However, there are a few universal characteristics that most Agile team structures should have. Agile teams should have a clear purpose. It leads to focus, which increases the speed and value delivered by the teams by 100%. T-shaped skills. The T-shaped metaphor comes from the idea that an individual can possess deep skills in one, or more, specific areas as well as a broader range of shallower skills in areas of expertise other than one's own. Cross-functional Agile team members have skills outside their traditional areas. Team size really matters. Teams of 5 to 7 people who are high-performing are 100% faster. Entrepreneurial. An Agile team member is one that doesn't wait to be told what to do. They do their job well because they want to, not because they are forced to do so. Team-oriented. Team players prioritize the success of the team over their own personal glory. If everyone is delivering on time and syncing well together, they see that as a win. Committed to excellence. One of the key benefits of Agile projects is delivering quality work faster. Team members who are committed to excellence don't settle for average. They're not hung up on perfection, but they're dedicated to always producing their best work. So, these are a few typical characteristics that Agile teams have. By now I am sure you understand how traditional teams differ from Agile teams. Let me summarize. Traditional teams follow a top-down approach. It means that the project manager is responsible for getting the job done. When a problem occurs, it escalates to managers. However, Agile teams are self-organized and self-managed. When problems occur, the entire team works together as a unit to resolve the issue. Traditionally, a project is organized around component teams. So, if a particular release requires a range of different expertise, it will need to involve multiple component teams. Different teams will have different sets of priorities, which inevitably leads to bottlenecks in the product release cycle. Whereas Agile teams are cross-functional and interdisciplinary. It means that a group of people with different functional expertise are working toward a common goal. In a traditional team, an organization evaluates individual performance. In an Agile team, an organization evaluates team performance. In the traditional approach, you have distinct roles and job titles. But in Agile, teams are usually cross-functional and here, skills matter more than titles. Lastly, traditional teams are not a fixed size. Whereas, the Agile teams are usually short, like around 3 to 9 people per team. So everyone, that's about Agile components and teams. Now let us learn the phases of the Agile process or lifecycle. At its core, Agile is a continuous, cyclical process that encourages flexibility, experimentation, and adaptability. The 6 phases of Agile are flexible, evolving, and often overlap. The first phase is requirement analysis. During this phase of Agile methodology, projects are envisioned, crafted, and prioritized based on the needs of the customer and the goals of the company. For every concept, the team defines the business opportunity and determines the time and work it'll take to complete the project. The next phase is planning. In this step, teams are formed and appropriate funding is designated. The teams work with stakeholders to determine the requirements and formulate them. It is in this step, the team uses user flow diagrams or high-level UML diagrams to demonstrate how the new feature should function and how it will fit into their existing system. The next phase is the design phase. Once a team has defined requirements for the initial sprint based on stakeholder feedback and requirements, the work begins. Designers, developers, and other team members begin working on their first iteration of the project, with the goal of having a working product to launch at the end of the sprint. After design comes implementation, quality assurance testing, documentation development, internal and external training, and final release of the iteration goes into production during this phase of the process. You're nearly ready to release your product into the world. Testing. In this step, teams continue to create, troubleshoot, and support the software product as it progresses. By the time development reaches the testing and deployment phases, the client has already seen the project multiple times. Release and evaluation. In this step, the product is delivered to customers for them to use. Customer notifications and migrations are considered, along with end-of-life activities. Afterward, the Agile software development lifecycle phases start anew, either with a new iteration or by moving toward the next stage. In the further iterations, you update the already installed software, introduce new features and resolve bugs. That's how the life cycle of a typical Agile methodology looks like. Like I mentioned earlier, more often than not, the phases evolve as the product changes. Or overlap one another, so there are multiple stages in the process concurrently. Now the question is, how does the team know if they would be completing the work on time? How do they keep track of their progress? Estimate the amount of time they might need to complete the sprint. How do they measure success? This is where Agile metrics come in. Without bringing Agile metrics into the picture, using Agile won't bring much value to a company. I am sure you might have heard the work metrics before. They are just standards of measurement. But what do you exactly measure? Using metrics you can measure the development process, gauging productivity, work quality, predictability, and health of the team and products that are being developed. However, tracking multiple metrics can become counterproductive. It is important to select the key metrics to track and incorporate within their business. And you don't want to measure too many things and scatter your team's focus. So which metrics matter and how do you choose them? Here are some things you need to consider before deciding on the metrics for your project to track. Firstly, metrics should be used by the members of the Agile team and not outsiders. They should not be imposed or measured by management. They should be used voluntarily by Agile teams to learn and improve. Secondly, the Agile metrics should serve as conversation starters. Metrics should not just be numbers, they should be the starting point of a conversation about process and roadblocks affecting the team. The Agile team also needs to have a clear strategy regarding what it plans to do with the numbers collected and how the metrics would impact the future of the software project. Thirdly, Agile metrics should work together with other metrics to provide a balanced picture. Did you know that even a great metric when used alone, might lead to tunnel vision, and incentivize teams to maximize that metric at the expense of all else? Using several metrics together provides a balanced picture of Agile activity. Also, the metric should be used to answer a specific question about Agile processes, not just measured for the sake of measurement. Lastly, every metric that you use should be easy to calculate and understand. Metrics that are overly complex or not fully understood will not be useful in guiding you and your team's activities, even if they provide good insights into a team's work. Now with these points in mind, let us look at a few of the top metrics used by Agile teams. The first metric that we have is sprint burndown. We have an Agile methodology called Scrum. As you already know, Scrum teams organize development into time-boxed sprints. At the beginning of the sprint, the team forecasts how much work they can complete during a sprint. A sprint burndown report is used for tracking the completion of different tasks during a sprint. Time and work left to complete are the two main parameters of measurement in this case. Next up we have velocity. Velocity is the average amount of work an Agile team completes during a sprint, measured in either story points or hours, and is very useful for forecasting. As time passes, velocity tends to evolve. If the velocity declines, it's a sign that the team needs to fix something. So, the number of story points completed over the past few sprints gives you the sprint velocity. Velocity is powerful because it's a result metric. You will know how much value was actually delivered to customers in a series of sprints. While velocity is an important metric, it cannot be used as a measure of competence or performance of the Agile team. Be careful not to compare velocity across teams because each team's velocity is unique. Next on the list are lead time and cycle time. They are very simple to understand. Both these metrics show you how long work items spend in a given process. However, there is also a clear differentiation between them. Lead time shows you the total time from the moment a story enters the system, in the backlog, until it is completed as part of a sprint, or released to customers. Lead time is an important metric, actually more important than velocity. The reason for this is it provides the exact end-to-end time calculation for every process. As shown on the screen, the cycle time is a subset of lead time. It measures the time for a task to go from started or in progress to done. In other words, with cycle time, you can measure how many hours or days someone actively worked on a task to complete it. It is a powerful metric because it is a very simple metric that can raise a red flag when items within sprints across your entire system are not moving forward. The fourth metric that we have is the cumulative flow diagram. Cumulative flow is an important Kanban metric for ensuring a consistent flow of work across the team. It shows the status of tasks in a sprint, a release, or across software teams. As you can see in the image, the stories and the various story points are plotted in the vertical axis while the horizontal axis depicts time. Different colors are used to depict the different stages the stories are in. Bubbles or gaps in any one color indicate shortages and bottlenecks. For example, a big bubble in the chart in a verification or testing stage indicates this stage has insufficient resources. Now, why is it important? Just like burndown charts, the power of this metric is in its visual simplicity. You can grasp a process in one glance and immediately identify issues. Next, we have control charts. In Agile, control charts focus on the time duration from the in progress to the complete status of tasks. Their purpose is mainly to check the cycle time of a single issue. What do you think measuring cycle time is important? It is an efficient and flexible way to improve a team's processes because, in the case of changes, you can discern the results instantly and make any further adjustments right away. Lastly, we have throughput. In Agile, throughput measures the average number of work items processed per unit of time. You can think of it as a measure for story points per iteration. It represents a team's productivity level. Using throughput, you understand the effect of workflow on business performance and can get a better overview of the capacity of your team. In general, throughput is one of the most crucial Agile performance metrics. To measure the throughput of your team week by week, you can use the throughput run chart. Actually, there are many other very useful metrics that are widely used and are worth mentioning. A few of them are code coverage, net promoter score, epic, and release burndown, work in progress, escape defects, failed deployments, and many others. The Agile approach is often mistakenly considered to be a single methodology. Yet, there are dozens of methodologies and certain practices that have not been touched upon in this tutorial. Since the inception of Agile, a variety of methodologies have emerged. The most popular and common ones are Scrum, Extreme Programming, Feature-Driven Development, Adaptive Software Development, Crystal, and Lean Software Development. Teams generally pick one or two methods. The most widely used methodologies are Scrum and XP, which dovetail nicely. Also, there is Scrumban, which is another popular hybrid methodology. Let us go through a few of them in detail. Let us begin with the Scrum Framework. Scrum is, undoubtedly, the most used of the many frameworks of the Agile methodology. Scrum is a lightweight Agile framework for developing, delivering, and sustaining complex products. It works by breaking down large products and services into small pieces that can be completed by a cross-functional team in a short time frame. It addresses two important issues, which are delivery speed, and a flexible way of handling ever-changing client requirements. When you talk about Scrum, there are three things that you should know: roles, artifacts, and events. If you are interested to know more, you can refer to the What is Scrum video on our YouTube channel. Coming back, let us quickly understand how the Scrum process works. The Scrum process starts with a backlog. The product owner creates a product backlog, which is a list of specifications from the client or end users. Using input from all the stakeholders, all the requirements are entered into the backlog as user stories. After the backlog is finalized, the product owner and development team conduct sprint planning. During sprint planning, the team pulls a small chunk from the top of product backlog items to work on during the sprint. That chunk becomes the sprint backlog. On a daily basis, the development team coordinates their work in a daily scrum. Along the way, the Scrum Master helps the Scrum team perform at their highest level and make smooth progress toward their sprint goal. At the end of each sprint, the development team delivers a functioning piece of the product to show for their work. The development team holds a sprint review to demonstrate what they have accomplished during the sprint. Any stakeholders, senior managers, and other affected departments such as marketing, customer support, and others are invited to attend and give feedback. After the sprint review, the team gathers for a sprint retrospective to discuss what went right or wrong and areas for improvements for further sprints. They make tangible plans for how to improve their own process, tools, and relationships. Unlike in the sprint review, where the focus is on the product, in sprint retrospectives, the focus is on the process. As the next sprint begins, the team chooses another chunk of the product backlog and begins working again. Beyond the sprint, the cycle repeats until enough items in the product backlog have been completed, the budget is depleted, or a deadline arrives. This way, Scrum ensures that the most valuable work has been completed by the time the project ends. Now, let us move on to the next methodology, Kanban. Kanban is a highly visual way of executing Agile. Its origin dates back to the 1940s. A Toyota engineer, named Taiji Ono, created a system that used paper cards for signaling and tracking demand in his factory, naming the new system Kanban. Since then, the Kanban development methodology has gained quite a noticeable popularity. Kanban focuses on maintaining a continuous task flow and continuous delivery. At the same time, the team is never given more work than it can handle. This is accomplished through the two primary principles of Kanban: visualize your work and limit the work in progress, WIP. Here's how these principles are applied. Principle 1 is to visualize your work. First, you collect the work required for a project and document it on the cards. The cards are then placed on the Kanban board. The Kanban board is split into categories of work to be done, work in progress, and completed work, and teams can add more categories as necessary to better visualize their process. Each task is recorded on a Kanban card. As each card is addressed, it moves to the next phase until it's moved completely through the workflow. This is how the entire team sees the status of the work being done. Understanding and observing the current flow of work will help you visualize how tasks are progressing through the workflow. The next principle is to limit work in progress. The Kanban methodology puts strict limits on the amount of work in progress at any given time. You limit the workflow by limiting the number of cards allowed in each column based on your team's capacity and the nature of their work. So, once the limit is reached, no more cards can be added there. Like the number 2 on the second column. So, at a point in time, you cannot have more than 2 cards in the second column. When you limit work in progress, it helps teams to complete the work at hand before moving to the next one. It identifies bottlenecks, and it encourages individual contributors to rally together to fix them. In a nutshell, that's how Kanban teams work. It's an ideal approach for projects with lots of incoming tasks that vary in priority and size. Now let us talk about another popular Agile methodology, extreme programming. Often used with Scrum, XP is an example of how Agile can heighten customer satisfaction. This is a typical Agile development framework, developed by Kent Beck, and can be adapted to development companies of various dimensions. It involves a high degree of participation between two important parties in the software exchange, customers and developers. Customers inspire further development by emphasizing the most useful features of a given software product through testimonials. The developers, in turn, bring up software upgrades on this feedback while continuing to test new innovations every few weeks. Let's check how Sophie's team uses XP to develop a new app. The first phase of extreme programming's life cycle is planning, where customers or users meet with the development team to create user stories or requirements. Based on the feature descriptions collected from customers, in the form of user stories, Sophie builds a list of customer requirements. These requirements are then used to draft a release plan for the entire game. The software developers write the test plan for each iteration as a final planning activity. The team then starts working on designing and developing the software. The unique point here is that the team works in programmer pairs to produce higher quality software. During the iteration, the team holds daily meetings to ensure there are no roadblocks and obstacles. The software is then sent for testing, again using paired programming. Post that the software is released to customers for acceptance testing. The customer delivers feedback in the form of more user stories. The cycle repeats until the software is delivered. This methodology offers trust to the developers by motivating them to accept changes in the customer's requirements, even if they arrive at a later stage of the development cycle. The next one that we are exploring is Crystal methodology. Crystal is an agile software development approach that mainly focuses on people and their interactions as opposed to processes and tools. It is a very flexible framework and avoids rigid processes because of its human-powered or people-centric focus. Crystal method is based on two fundamental assumptions. Teams can streamline their processes as their work and become a more optimized team. Projects are unique and dynamic and require specific methods. Alistair believed that one size doesn't fit all. In other words, it means that one method can't get applied to every project. That is why he designed Crystal in a way that it has various methods. The Crystal family includes variants such as Crystal Clear, Crystal Yellow, Crystal Orange, and Crystal Red. Now that question that arises is, how do you choose between these Crystal methodologies? Which approach will be most suitable for your projects depends on three dimensions: team size, criticality, and the priority of the project. The maximum number of people that need to be involved in a project depends on the size of the project. Bigger projects, more people. The number of team roles also depends on the project size. There are 4 levels of criticality: comfort, discretionary money, essential money, and life. Like any other Agile methodology, Crystal focus on early delivery of working software, frequency, less bureaucracy, and high involvement of users. The Crystal family suggests that each project is unique and requires the application of different processes, practices, and policies. This is why it is perceived as one of the most lightweight approaches to Agile project management. Apart from these, we also have Lean development and feature-driven development, or FDD. You may be wondering, what is the best Agile project management methodology? XP, Scrum, Kanban, Crystal, or FDD? Well, any selection that you might make should ultimately depend on the demands and processes that factor into your business culture. With this, we have covered almost every fundamental topic related to Agile methodology. Let's move on to the next part of this tutorial, scaling Agile methodology. With the amount of benefits Agile is offering, by now most business leaders are familiar with Agile innovation. Naturally, leaders who have experienced or heard about Agile teams are asking some compelling questions. What if a company were to launch dozens, hundreds, or even thousands of Agile teams throughout the organization? Can Agile be applied at scale? Would scaling up Agile improve corporate performance as much as Agile methods improve individual team performance? Answering all these questions, yes, Agile can be applied at scale. Agile can be applied across multiple teams and projects and works for both on-site or remote teams, or a hybrid of both. There's no right way to scale Agile. But many organizations have had great success evolving their processes, teams, and cultures using frameworks for scaling Agile. Let's quickly go through top scaled Agile frameworks. First, we have SAFe, or Scaled Agile Framework. It is a set of organization and workflow patterns for implementing Agile practices at an enterprise scale. It was formed around 3 primary bodies of knowledge: Agile software development, Lean product development, and systems thinking. SAFe is prescriptive and addresses the enterprise at 4 levels: team, program, value stream, and portfolio. It encourages alignment, collaboration, and delivery across large numbers of Agile teams. Large-scale Scrum is simply a regular Scrum applied to large-scale development. It builds on top of the Scrum principles such as empiricism and cross-functional, self-managing teams, and provides a framework for applying that at scale. LSS is a good starting point when you already have Scrum in place and are just beginning to scale up with more teams, one at a time. The framework stresses the idea that scaling frameworks should be minimalistic. By that I mean, it should include fewer rules, roles, and artifacts to drive success. Next up we have Disciplined Agile, or DA. It's a process decision framework that provides a comprehensive guide to everything you need for an Agile transformation. DA utilizes Scrum and Kanban, along with transformation knowledge in areas like HR and finance, governance, DevOps, portfolio management, and more. It is often considered more flexible and easier to scale than other methods. What makes DA especially interesting and useful is that it is based upon real data, providing you with an insight into what's going on in other organizations. Lastly, we have Scrum at Scale. Scrum at Scale is basically an extension of the Scrum Framework. It is usually adopted by organizations that have already succeeded in implementing Scrum at the team level, and are looking to spread it throughout the organization. The main goal here is to align growing organizations around one common and shared set of goals. Coordination is managed through a Scrum of Scrums, which is a daily meeting where multiple Scrum Masters and Chief Product Owners meet to discuss their work and progress. Apart from the ones we discussed, there are a few others, namely Nexus, Enterprise Scrum, Spotify Lean Management, Agile portfolio management, and others. Please be informed that these frameworks can add unnecessary processes when they're applied without thought or intent. Be it scaling Agile to enterprise level or implementing it in small teams, the successful Agile transformation only occurs when teams follow certain best practices. Let's quickly go through a few of the Agile best practices. Agile advocates that entire teams should function like closely integrated units. This includes teams like project management, developers, quality assurance, and the customer. More frequent collaboration. The Agile teams should attend daily meetings so as to decide on the day's work and dependencies. This is because constant communication is considered one of the most important factors essential to team integration. One of the most important principles relates to regularly inspecting and adapting at the end of each sprint. This means that the team should inspect its own practices, and then decide as to what to change and how to adapt to the change. The Agile methodology encourages teams to account for any distractions that may come up during an iteration in advance. Thus, to avoid any end-moment surprises, the delivery team should try to estimate the efforts that may go into dealing with the risks and roadblocks. And they should prepare plans for end deliverables accordingly. Plan new sprints when there are enough items in the product backlog. Otherwise, you risk that your project suffers from scope creep. This is what happens when the scope of your project grows without control because you failed to fully define the scope of the upcoming sprints in the backlog. Setting communication standards is important. Remote communication is even harder during Agile development, even if teams meet every day for daily stand-up meetings. Therefore, it is important to define communication guidelines and write them down in a document that will be distributed among all team members. Prioritize tasks in the product backlog. One of the Agile best practices that is always recommended is that the user stories and features should always be prioritized based on the business value being offered by them and the risks involved. Well, these are just a few best practices that teams can follow to ensure success. You can always look for more best practices and see what other enterprises are applying. Till now we have touched a lot of facts such as Agile becoming mainstream, Scrum being the most popular framework, a lot of domains using Agile, popular Agile metrics, and such. Well, all these facts are statistically verified. You will need all the necessary information to make informed decisions in the midst of the economic uncertainty and develop a successful career in the Agile sphere. Let's uncover some interesting correlations that I picked up from the 14th Annual State of the Agile Report, produced by CollabNet version 1, now part of Digital.I. So, let's talk numbers. The first fact that I have here is that we have seen increased Agile adoption over the past few years. As of May 2020, out of 40,000 correspondents that participated in the survey, 95% of them reported that their organizations are practicing Agile development methodologies. Agile methodology, which took off in the software industry following the Agile Manifesto in 2001, and has since then spread to all kinds of management challenges in every other sector, not just software. We can now see Agile in manufacturing, budgeting, human resources, retail, petroleum, auditing, and Agile organizational culture. Well, it is not much to say that the future is more Agile. Next up, in the report, accelerating software delivery and enhancing the ability to manage changing priorities were listed as the two main reasons for adopting Agile methodology. The other improved capabilities that continue to round out the top 5 are business or IT alignment, team morale, delivery speed or time to market, and team productivity. Now let us check out the benefits reported by respondents. The top 5 benefits of adopting Agile are built around speed and adaptability. The other benefits listed were business alignment, delivery time, team morale, project risk reduction, and others with project cost reduction last on the list. I already mentioned earlier that Agile is an umbrella term for various methodologies, Scrum being the most popular one. According to the 14th annual stage of the Agile report, Scrum remains the most widely used Agile framework with at least 75% of the survey respondents practicing Scrum or a hybrid that includes Scrum. Next to Scrum, we have Kanban, Extreme Programming, Lean, and many others. A significant shift in Agile techniques occurred, as product road mapping increased 9% while release planning decreased 11%. The main reasons for this change may include a general increase in continuous integration, continuous deployment, and better defined program increment planning. According to the survey, the top 5 Agile techniques that help teams adhere to the 12 principles of Agile include daily stand-ups, retrospectives, sprint or iteration planning, sprint or iteration review, and short iterations. And not surprisingly, when it comes to scaling Agile, SAFe is the scaling framework of choice, again. The Scaled Agile Framework or SAFe continues to be the most popular scaling method cited by respondents, increasing by 5% over last year and outpacing the number 2 choice, Scrum at Scale, by 19%. Lastly, due to the uproaring popularity of Agile methodology, there are copious amounts of tools that have jumped on the bandwagon and have started to recognize themselves as the best Agile tools. Honestly, there is a myriad of different tools to manage Agile projects. According to the 14th Annual State of the Agile Report, Jira still remains the most popular and widely used Agile tool, with 67% of respondents reported using it. Other popular Agile tools include Pivotal Tracker, Version 1, Planbox, TeamForge, LeanKit, Asana, Axisoft, Taiga, and so many others. So, we have arrived at the best part. For the rest of the session, I will show you the hope to use Jira software to manage your project. You would have probably heard of Jira because it is one of the most widely used Agile tools. Jira products were built to assist teams of all types in managing their work, and it provides nearly every Agile capability you can think of. I mean, if you want a proper definition, Jira is a proprietary issue tracking product developed by Atlassian that allows bug tracking and Agile project management. Nevertheless, the software comes packed with a lot of cool features, as you mentioned on the slide. Let's quickly go through the tool and check out its features, shall we? Before that, though Jira is loved by many teams around the world, it isn't without its flaws. The biggest pitfall to Jira is due to its steep learning curve, slowness, and clutter. It can be hard to get started with if you haven't already used Jira previously. With that said, let us quickly go through the tool. As you can see on the screen, Jira tool provides assistance at every step of your development lifecycle. You can create user stories and issues, plan sprints, and distribute tasks across your software team. Next, you can prioritize and discuss your team's work in full context with complete visibility. Also, you can ship your products with ease. Based on your real-time visual data, you can make important decisions and improve team performance. Since all the teams might not have the same workflow, Jira allows you to customize your workflow. And like I said before, you can easily integrate Jira with the tools you're already using. You can also create easy-to-follow roadmaps for your teams. And most importantly, all these tasks can be automated on Jira. That way you can save time and stay focused on work. Moreover, you can extend Jira software with thousands of apps such as AHA, Adobe, Zephyr, GitHub, and others. As you can see, Jira allows you to host your ideas and processes on cloud with multiple pricing options that are just right for your teams. We will get to the pricing part a little bit later. Also, thousands of modern software teams already use Jira software and other solutions from the Atlassian suite. A few of its top customers: Airbnb, Spotify, Cisco, Domino's, eBay, Rosetta Stone, and many others. Now let us try out a few features. First of all, if you go to pricing, you can see that Jira is available for free, though only a few features are available in the free package. Based on requirements such as team size and scale of your operation, you can always go for standard, premium, and enterprise plans. Please explore pricing in detail before opting for it. I have already signed in for a free plan. It's quite easy and credit card details are not required. You can either give your email it or log in through other means such as your Google account or Microsoft account, and others as you can see on the screen. I will now create a new account and show you how to get started. First, you need to provide an email ID for your account, and then you need to choose a unique name for your site. Then click on Agree once you find a suitable site name. Also, as I mentioned earlier, you do not need to provide the credit card information to create an account. It might take a while. Once you click on Agree, just like any software, Jira will ask you a few questions. For example, what type of team do you work in? Let's say software development, and then your role, product manager. After that, it might take a while for your Atlassian Cloud site to get started. The next step is to invite your teammates. Initially, you can provide 3 email IDs. For this demo, let me provide 3 IDs. Then click on Continue. Then Jira will ask you a few questions that will help you set up your account. You can choose to skip this step as well. Post that you need to choose a template for your project. It can be a next-gen template or a classic template. The basic difference is that next-gen projects provide a streamlined experience, are easier to use, and quicker to set up than classic projects. They don't require any setup or configuration from a Jira admin, so they're perfect for teams who want to work quickly and independently. On the other hand, the classic templates offer comparatively more features, provide customizations, and are a little bit difficult to configure. In this demo, I am choosing a classic Scrum template. Later on, you can always change your template. So, once you choose a template, you will be asked to create a project. Give your project a unique name and key. Key basically is used as a prefix of your project's issues. So, make it descriptive and easy to type. In this case, that would be a travel guide app and the key would be TGA. Then click on the Create button. If you wish to change the template, you can change it by clicking on the Change Template here. Once you've created your project, you will land on the active sprint page, which is currently empty. As you can see on the screen, Jira also offers the Quick Start feature. I'm going to close that for now. There is a product backlog section. Empty backlog, as you can see on the screen. The product backlog contains an ongoing list of your team's potential work items for the project. Apart from that, I am sure you can see a lot of other typical Agile features such as roadmap, backlog, sprint reports, and many other awesome features. You should know that, in Jira, teams use issues to track individual pieces of work that must be completed. Depending on how your team uses Jira, these issues can be stories, tasks, bugs, a help desk ticket, and others. Issues can also have subtasks that are assigned and tracked individually. To know more about these issues, on the left navigation pane, you can find a term called Project Setting, and under that, go for issue types. As you can see, a story is a feature expressed as a user goal. A bug is an error. We also have epics. An epic is a large body of work that can be broken down into a number of smaller stories, or issues you can say. Then there are tasks and subtasks. Now let us go back to the project. So, the next step is to add some epics, user stories, and tasks to our product backlog. To make the job easier, the product owner can always create a detailed user story map. For this travel guide app, I have created a sample user story map as you can see on the screen. A user map should be created after a detailed discussion with other team members, major stakeholders, and others who are part of this project. I have various features set for different releases. In Release 1, I have MVP features that are just enough to get the first version of the product out with the least amount of risk. By the way, MVP refers to a minimum value product. In this example, MVP features would be user profile management, which includes user registration, login, and geolocation. Then there is a search system that has various filters based on which users can search for rooms, places, etc. Then there's booking, payment, and review and recommendations. As you can see, the additional features which I and my team thought would make my app successful, we have included them for the next releases. Such as itinerary generator, weather forecasting, social media sharing, expense tracking, voice search, etc. in releases 2 and 3. This entire process is called user story mapping. Based on this, now let us go and create some epics and stories on Jira. Let's begin with epics. To create epic, click the Create Epic option on the product backlog screen. In the dialog box that opens, you can enter the details related to epics such as name, description. Let me name the epic as User Profile Management. Actually, these are the basic fields that are currently visible. You can easily enable other fields by clicking the Configure Fields option, and enable any of that you can see here. Let's go with the basic settings for now. Try to keep the epic name and summary simple. Then click on Create. Similarly, I am going to create other epics as well. Now, we have all the epics ready. Review and rating, payment, booking, browse and search, and user profile management. As you can see, our first epic does not have any issues yet. So, the next step is to create stories and tasks. In order to do that, you just need to click on the Create Issue button here. The issue can be a story, a task, or a bug. To create either of those, you can just expand this, and click on Open Create. You can also change the issue type here if you want to. Again, there are a lot of fields here and you can configure which fields you want to give details for. So, let's go ahead and create one. Give a basic summary, such as user registration. If you have any documents related to the story, like a reference or a research document or anything, you can upload it here. Next is the user story description. Now, there is a specific format to create user stories. You can find a detailed explanation of what user stories are and how they can be created on our YouTube channel. Anyways, let me give you a basic example. As a new user, I want to register, so that I can become a registered user. Now, let us explore more fields. You can make any of your teammates as a reporter, based on their role. Suppose your story depends on another story, then you can link it with other issues using the Linked Issues option, and select the issue in question. For now, I am not doing that. Then you can assign the task to the responsible person. By expanding this, you can see all the people related to the project. After that, set the priority of the story. In this case, I have set it to high. Next up, we have a field called Labels. Labels, as the name implies, can be thought of as a tag or keyword. Let us leave it blank for now. Next up we have to choose epic. You just need to select the epic under which you want the user story to belong. In this case, it will be user profile management. Since we have not created any sprint yet, let us leave it blank for now. Finally, click on Create. Now a story is created. For some reason, it's not getting displayed. Let me refresh the screen and clear the filter. So, yes. Now you can see the story that we just created. In a similar manner, I'm going to create another user story. Let's name it User Login, and you can upload the related files here. Now the description. As a registered user, I want to be able to log in using my email and password, so that I can start using the app. So basically, it has 3 parts: who, what, and why. The next part of the user story is acceptance criteria. This part actually helps the development team to ensure that they have taken all possible scenarios into consideration. It provides a deeper and better understanding of the story. For example, in this case, I can have multiple criteria such as: user can only submit a form by filling all the mandatory fields. The email provided by the user should be a valid email. Submission from the same IP can only be made 3 times within 30 minutes. That's one way of writing. To know more, I suggest you explore more about user stories. Let's set the priority to high. You can also link the user story with epic once the story is created as well. Great! Now one more user story is created. In the same way, I have created the rest of the user stories as well. You can always go to any of these user stories and edit their details. I have actually created user stories for the additional feature of the app as well, such as itinerary generator, weather forecasting, etc. So, now your product backlog is ready. As you can see, only my first story is linked to the epic. We have to link epics to other user stories as well. All you have to do is, just click on the epic, select more fields, and give the epic link. In this case, user profile management. Similarly, I am doing it for the rest of the user stories as well. So it's done finally. As you can see, each of these user stories is linked to an epic now. Jira also provides an option to change the color of your epics. Let me just show it to you. You just need to expand this and select the color of your choice. Then you just need to refresh your page to see the changes. As you can see, the changes are applied. Now, I want to arrange these epics and user stories according to the releases. I have categorized my epics and user stories into multiple releases, and have kept only MVP features in the first release. Let's go ahead and create a release. In order to create a release, you need to click the versions option on the backlog page, as shown on the screen. Let's name it to Release 1. The rest of the fields are optional. But I am going to assign the values now itself. Let's assume that, with all the dependencies considered, my team would be able to complete the first release in 50 days. Now my release is ready, I just need to map which user stories that I and my team intend to compete in this release. Let's do that. Based on the user story map, I have around 11 user stories to be completed in this release. You just need to click on the user story, expand Show More Fields, and under Fix Versions, select the version you just created. That would be Release 1. Simple, right? Do that for all the other 8 user stories. Post that, you will see a tag attached to the user stories, just like this. Let me do that for all the user stories. So, these are the features that will be going in Release 1. The next step is to create a sprint. In Scrum, you know that prior to creating a sprint, the entire Scrum team attends a sprint planning meeting to finalize the sprint backlog. So, basically, the entire team decides what to add to include in the sprint. So, to create a sprint, all you have to do is click on Create Sprint. Then drag the user stories from your product backlog to sprint backlog. For now, I am going to add the top 5 user stories to my sprint backlog. When you are creating a sprint, the important task is to estimate how long it will take. As you can see, the estimate for the sprint is currently 0. So, what exactly is estimation? Estimation is simply measuring the effort needed for implementing stories, or bug fixes in the product backlog. You can estimate the product backlog, decide on how many issues to include in each sprint, or just calculate roughly the time it will take to complete sprint backlog items or product backlog in total. Traditional software teams give estimates in a time format: days, weeks, months. Many Agile teams, however, have transitioned to story points. Apart from estimation, Jira allows you to perform time tracking. Time tracking is basically the ability to measure the progress of the sprint and the team at a much more granular level. Usually, it is measured in minutes, hours, or days. Let's discuss story points. Story points are units of measure for expressing an estimate of the overall effort required to fully implement a product backlog item or any other piece of work. You need to assign story points relative to the complexity of the work, the effort required, and risk or uncertainty. Often the story points are given in a Fibonacci-like format, like 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, 20, 40, 100. Now if your story point is going beyond 20, it is suggested to break that story into 2. In this example, since it is the first sprint, the team might not really know how many stories point to add to the sprint. Based on previous experience, let's say the team has decided to assign 16 story points for the first sprint. By default, the story points field is only available to issues of type story or epic. Let's take the user login story. Since login is a common functionality, I'm going to assign 2 story points. Next, I am going to add the original estimate as well. It just shows how much time you're expecting to complete the task, or in this case a story. Let's say 3D. You can start tracking time by clicking on the work log here, and by mentioning the hours that you can already spend on this task. Let's give 2 days. Once we do that, the original estimate will get updated, as you can see on the screen. Let us check out the other available features here. You can change the stats of the story based on the workflow. Then change the assignee and reporter if required. We also have something called labels. Using labels you can align issues that don't come under the same epic or story, or just make searching for stories much easier. Anyone from the team can add them. Let's add a label here, something like login. You will know its usage later. Apart from that, you can assign versions and create subtasks as well. Let's do that. For example, user login can be divided into multiple subtasks such as user login page UI UX design, login page development, and forgot password workflow. For each subtask, you can again add assignee and reporter. Add versions and set the priority as well. Further, you can give a very detailed description of each of these tasks. I am also going to add a label as well. Same as before, which is login. Then let's set the original estimate to 1 day. And the work log is 4 hours. You can see that the original estimate is reflecting the changes. I am also going to set the version to release 1. Let's go back to the project now and assign the story points for the rest of the user stories as well. Remember, this is just an example, and in real projects, the story points are decided after discussion by the entire team. In this example, the first sprint has a total of 16 story points. So, now we have a sprint planned. You just need to start the sprint by clicking on the Start Sprint option you see on the screen. Give a name to the sprint and set the sprint duration. The general sprint duration is 2 weeks, so I'm going to use that in this example. You can also customize the sprint duration. After that, set the start date and click on Start. Your sprint is now ready and has begun. Now, if you check the board, you can see all the epic stories and subtasks that we created earlier. By default you can see To Do, In Progress, and Done columns. But you can always customize the board based on the workflow you require. Before we look into customization, let us check out how to filter the issues. You just need to go to Issues here, and you can easily filter all the issues based on multiple options. For example, based on the assignee just like you see on the screen. You can also filter based on the status or type of the issue. You can also apply advanced searching. Here, I'm going to apply label as a filter. If you remember, we had assigned a label called login for the user login story and another subtask. Once I apply that, I can see all the related issues. So, that's one way you can make use of the label feature. Now let us customize the Scrum board. For that, you just need to click here and go for board settings. From the multiple options that you see here, click on columns. Here you can easily add or remove columns. To add a column, first, you need to create the status and then the column. You will see a new column called Review after in progress. Similarly, let us create another one called Testing. Once created, you can easily move the column around. Now if you go back to the project, you can see that the changes are reflected and 2 new columns are added. Now you can easily determine the status of your tasks by moving them to different columns as you can see on the screen. I am getting an error, let me check why it's happening. Great, now it's working. You can also filter your cards here based on the assignee. Let us now discuss the other options in the board settings. The column we already checked earlier. Next up we have quick filters, where you can use Jira query language. You can also set card colors and layout. Next up we have an estimation. We have already talked about estimation and time tracking earlier, right? So you can set different estimated statistics and change the time tracking criteria. So, please do explore this session in detail. Lastly, let us talk about reports. Like we discussed in the theory part of the session, there are different metrics that are available on Jira. As you can see, we have burndown charts, burnup charts, cumulative flow diagrams, control charts, and many others. For example, we have a burndown chart that can be used to track the total work remaining and project the likelihood of achieving the sprint goal, as you can see on the screen. We also have a burn-up chart, though it is not commonly used. Then there is a sprint report that helps you determine if your team is overcommitted or if there is any excessive scope creep. Next up, we have a velocity chart. You cannot see any stats for this example because we have initiated only one sprint. However, the velocity metric tracks the amount of work completed from sprint to sprint. You will be able to see the data once you add more sprints. There is a cumulative flow diagram, which is actually a Kanban metric for ensuring a consistent flow of work across the team. It shows the status of tasks in a sprint or a release. There are a version report and many other different kinds of reports available. The point is, each of these reports serves different purposes. It is important for you to understand which metric is right for you and your team. Well, that's it, guys. I have just shown you one sprint for better understanding. In a similar manner, you can manage your projects using Jira software. What I have covered here are just the basic features that Jira offers. Please go ahead and explore the Jira tool and the free features it offers. That's it, folks. With this, we have reached the end of the session. Hope you have liked the session. If this has spiked your interest, and you want to know more about Agile methodology, I recommend you opt for Agile certifications. At Invensis Learning, we provide various Agile certifications that will pave the way for your career in Agile. For each of these certifications, we are either accredited by respective governing bodies, or courses are in line with their guidelines. Post-enrollment, you will get lifetime access to a personalized learning management system. LMS has all the class recordings, live class, webinar links along with assignments and case studies to practice. All classes are live, instructor-led, delivered by trainers with rich domain experience. Thank you, guys. See you in the next session.